Okay, so let's dive right in. I think if you're listening to this, you've probably run into the same problem that we hear about all the time, which is
Hmm.
that there's just so much information out there when it comes to building muscle and losing fat. Every article you read, every influencer you follow
Right.
seems to have a totally different, often completely conflicting piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, it's a bit of a minefield out there, isn't it? I mean, you're bombarded with all these diets and workout fads
Mm.
and the next miracle supplement. It's almost impossible to figure out what will actually work for you, what's sustainable.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive into the Fast Mass material from Gregg Gillies.
Right.
Because one of the things that struck me right away about Gregg's story was that he wasn't always some, ripped dude.
Yeah.
He started out really skinny. He mentions like 141 pounds at 6 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
And for years, he kind of struggled, trying to wade through all this confusing advice and figure out what actually works to build muscle.
And, what's really insightful about Gregg's approach is that he quickly realized that these routines you see in muscle magazines,
Yeah.
a lot of times those are showcasing, guys who are genetically gifted or maybe even using,
Yeah.
substances that the average person just doesn't have access to.
Right, right.
So their physiology and their goals are just totally different
Totally.
than the average person who's just trying to, put on some muscle and look good.
Exactly. So Fast Mass kind of offers a different, I think, more grounded perspective.
Yeah.
And the thing that I found really encouraging about it is that the core message is that you can actually make a significant change to your body.
Hmm.
You can really pack on muscle and shed fat regardless of where you're starting.
Yeah. 100%. Anyone can do it.
You know?
It just boils down to understanding and consistently applying, the fundamentals.
Right.
And that's really what we're going to try to do today.
Mhm.
We're going to go through Fast Mass and we're going to try to extract the actionable insights for you guys listening.
Yeah.
So that you can cut through the noise and understand what actually matters when it comes to gaining muscle and losing fat.
Exactly. And, speaking of cutting through the noise, one of the first things that Gregg really emphasizes is that you got to stop overthinking and just start like so many people get caught up in this cycle of information overload
Uh-huh.
and they're always searching for the perfect routine or, biohack.
Right.
And they never actually start anything or stick with it long enough to see results.
Yeah, it's like analysis paralysis. That's a huge hurdle for a lot of people, And I think it comes from, like you said, the sheer volume of information,
Yeah.
but also the fact that a lot of this information is contradictory.
Yeah.
So it breeds fear and uncertainty and confusion.
Right.
People get so bogged down in the details, like, is this specific exercise optimal?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or what about this latest, biohacking thing I heard about? And they totally missed the big picture.
Right. And I think the point that Gregg's making is that you have to just choose a program. And we'll
Yeah.
talk about some of the specifics he lays out later on, but choose something that seems sensible
Yeah,
and then stick with it and see what happens.
exactly. Just do it. Get in the gym, prepare the meal, and see what results you get. Don't try to find all the answers before you even get started.
Right. And the other thing that Gregg really stresses is the importance of mastering the fundamentals.
Yes.
Before you even think about the latest supplements or, any fancy training methods or periodization plans.
Right. Don't get ahead of yourself.
It's like,
Focus on the fundamentals, the core principles, the bedrock, so to speak.
yeah. So what are those fundamentals?
So there are a few key things that he mentions. First of all, high-intensity weight training. That's number one.
Yeah.
You have to challenge your muscles.
Mm-hmm.
Second, consuming more calories than you burn. And by calories, I mean good quality calories.
Yeah, yeah.
This provides the fuel for muscle growth.
Makes sense.
The third thing is frequent eating. He recommends 5 to 6 meals per day, spread out evenly.
Wow.
This ensures a constant supply of nutrients to your body.
Okay.
Fourth is incorporating healthy fats, things like olive oil, avocados.
Yeah, those are important.
Yeah, a lot of people are afraid of fats, but they're actually essential for hormone production.
Yeah, yeah. Healthy fats often get a bad rap, don't they?
They do, but they're actually essential for muscle building.
Right.
We'll definitely talk more about the specifics of nutrition later on.
Okay, great. So high-intensity weight training, enough calories, frequent meals, and healthy fats.
Yeah, and we're not done yet.
Okay, keep going.
Fifth, prioritizing whole unprocessed foods.
Yeah.
You want to avoid the empty calories and unhealthy additives that you find in a lot of processed foods.
Okay.
Sixth, adequate water intake.
Yeah.
This is crucial for all bodily functions, including muscle growth. Make sure you're drinking enough water throughout the day. 7th is fiber. Make sure you're getting plenty of fibrous carbs, fruits, and vegetables.
Makes sense.
These provide sustained energy, as well as essential vitamins and minerals.
Okay.
And finally, and this is probably the most important one, at least 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass.
Okay. And that protein target, that can seem pretty high, especially for people who haven't focused on protein before.
Yeah, it can be a lot. Protein is the building block of muscle tissue. And if you want to build muscle, you need to make sure you're getting enough.
Right. And I think his point is that if you're not doing these basic things, then obsessing over the minor details like, which brand of creatine to use or, the intricacies of periodization.
Yeah, you're missing the forest for the trees.
Just won't really matter.
It's like trying to build a skyscraper on a weak foundation.
That's a good analogy. Okay, so you're taking action. You're focusing on the fundamentals. What's next?
Next is something that a lot of people overlook, and that is the importance of keeping a training diary.
Oh, interesting.
Gregg says that less than 1% of people who go to the gym actually use a training diary consistently.
That is surprising, actually.
Yeah. And, it might seem like a really basic thing,
but
it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
At a basic level, you should be recording your sets, reps, and weight for every exercise.
Okay.
But it's more than just numbers. You should also include an evaluation of how each workout felt.
Okay.
Did you feel strong? Were you tired? Were there any signs of overtraining?
So it's not just about how much you lifted, but also about how your body responded to the training.
Exactly. And this helps you to make adjustments.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to reduce the volume or increase the rest periods.
Right.
Gregg believes that a training journal is absolutely essential, regardless of your experience level.
Okay.
It promotes systematic organization.
Yeah.
It keeps you focused on your goals. And ultimately, it helps you to make progress faster.
So it really helps you to make your gym sessions, more than just going through the motions.
Exactly. You're not just wandering around the gym. You have a plan,
Yeah.
and you're tracking your progress.
Okay. And, one thing that I think people struggle with is, remembering all the details of their workouts,
Yeah, you're not going to remember everything.
So having that log eliminates all that.
Right. With a training log, you don't have to rely on your memory. You have a precise record of what you did last time.
Yeah.
So you know exactly what you need to do to improve.
That makes sense. And I imagine that having that data is also incredibly valuable for figuring out which parts of your program are working.
Absolutely. If you're hitting a plateau, you can look back at times when you were making progress and see what you were doing differently.
Yeah.
Maybe you were doing a certain exercise that you're not doing now, or you were eating more of a certain food.
Right.
The journal becomes a treasure trove of information.
Okay, so the training journal is really all about, like you said, eliminating that guesswork and really becoming more data-driven, right?
Yeah, exactly. It takes the guesswork out of it.
Okay, so we've got the training journal, we're focusing on fundamentals, we're taking action.
Yeah.
What else does Gregg really emphasize as a core element of making this happen?
Well, the next thing he talks about is goal setting.
Okay.
And he outlines a 7-step process for accelerating progress.
Okay.
And then he also talks about the SMART goal setting framework, which you've probably heard of before.
Right.
But it's always good to review it.
Yeah, definitely.
So first, he points out that, a lot of people go to the gym year after year, and they never really change. They're kind of on autopilot.
Oh, yeah.
You see the same faces, same exercises, no progress.
It's true. It's like they're just going through the motions.
Exactly. And he doesn't want you to be one of those people.
Right, of course.
So step 1 is to decide exactly what you want. What is your goal? And be specific.
Okay, specific.
Don't just say, I want to get fitter.
Yeah.
Say, I want to add 10 pounds of muscle. Or I want to increase my bench press by 40 pounds.
That makes it way more tangible.
Exactly. It helps you to prioritize your efforts. You're not wasting time on things that don't matter.
Right.
If your goal is to build muscle, you don't need to spend hours doing cardio.
Makes sense.
Okay. Step 2 is to write down your goals.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Gregg really believes in the power of writing things down. He says that written goals have a different energy to them.
Okay.
They're more real, more tangible.
Interesting.
So write down your goals and keep them somewhere visible.
I like that. So you're kind of like reinforcing it all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So what's step 3?
Step 3 is to set a deadline.
Okay.
This creates a sense of urgency.
Right.
Without a deadline, it's easy to procrastinate.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Think about it like a physique competitor. They have a competition date.
That deadline is a powerful motivator.
It's true. It creates accountability.
Exactly.
So we're being specific, writing it down, setting a deadline. What's step 4?
Step 4 is to make a list of everything you need to do to achieve your goal.
Okay, a to-do list, kind of?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But a really detailed to-do list.
Yeah.
Don't leave anything out.
All right.
The more thorough your plan,
Yeah,
the more likely you are to succeed.
that makes sense. Okay, so now we have our goal, our deadline, and our detailed to-do list.
Right. And now we need to organize that list into a plan.
Okay, so step 5 is planning.
Yes. Prioritize the actions based on their importance and sequence them logically. So, for example, if your goal is to gain 10 pounds of muscle in 12 weeks,
Okay.
your plan might involve training 3 times a week, squatting twice a week, adding 5 pounds to the bar each time you squat,
Yeah.
eating 6 high-protein meals a day,
Yeah.
and then making sure you're getting at least 3,000 calories.
So it's like a blueprint for success.
Exactly.
Okay, step 6.
Step 6 is to take action.
Okay, no more procrastinating.
No more excuses. Start now.
Right.
Don't wait for the perfect moment. Just get started.
And step 7,
Step 7 is to resolve to do something every day
every single day.
that moves you towards your goal,
Okay,
even if it's just a small thing.
I like that.
Whether it's preparing your meals for the next day or making sure you get enough sleep,
Right.
every little bit counts.
Okay, so those are the 7 steps. And you mentioned SMART goals.
Yeah, so that kind of comes in as you're going through those steps.
Okay.
The SMART acronym is a great way to further refine your goal setting.
Okay.
So S stands for specific. We already talked about that.
Yeah.
M stands for measurable.
Okay.
You need to be able to track your progress.
Makes sense. So how are you going to measure if you're actually hitting your targets, right?
Exactly. You can't measure getting fitter,
Right.
but you can measure a 40-pound increase on your bench press.
Yeah. Or how much your weight goes up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or how much body fat you lose.
And are there tools for measuring that, or?
Yeah, you can use things like body weight scales or
Okay.
calipers to measure your body fat.
Right.
And it's also a good idea to break down your larger goals into smaller, measurable actions.
So like smaller milestones along the way.
Exactly. So instead of focusing on gaining 10 pounds of muscle, you focus on eating 6 high-protein meals a day
Okay.
or training 3 times a week.
Right. Breaking it down.
Makes it more manageable.
And I think that makes it less daunting, right?
It does. And it gives you more frequent opportunities to celebrate your successes.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so we've got specific and measurable. What's A and R?
A is for attainable and R is for realistic.
Okay.
You want to set challenging goals,
Yeah.
but they also need to be achievable within your current capabilities.
Right. So you're not setting yourself up for failure.
Exactly. So aiming to increase your bench press by 50 pounds in 12 weeks. That might be ambitious, but it's also realistic for a lot of people. But aiming to bench 300 pounds in 4 weeks when you can currently only bench 75,
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
that's setting yourself up for failure.
Right.
And it's the same with weight loss.
Yeah.
Don't fall for those lose 30 pounds in 30 days scams.
Right. It has to be realistic.
It does.
Okay, so be ambitious, but stay grounded in reality. And lastly, T.
T is for timely.
Okay.
You need a deadline. We already talked about that,
Right, yeah.
but it's important to emphasize it again.
Makes sense.
A goal without a deadline is just a wish.
Okay, so set those deadlines and stick to them.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to break down larger goals into smaller, more manageable milestones.
Yeah, like we were talking about before.
Right. So if your goal is to lose 75 pounds, set an initial goal of losing 10 pounds in the next 2 months.
Makes it a lot less intimidating.
It does. And it creates a sense of urgency.
Right.
You're not just floating along, hoping to lose weight eventually.
Yeah, you've got that target date in mind.
You do. And it's also a good idea to reward yourself when you hit those milestones.
Okay. But I imagine you don't mean rewarding yourself with pizza and ice cream.
No, definitely not. Celebrate your successes in a way that supports your goals.
So healthy rewards.
Exactly. Maybe treat yourself to a movie or some new workout clothes.
Yeah.
Or just get some extra sleep.
Those are good ones. Okay, so we've covered goal setting in pretty good detail.
We have.
Now let's move on to training. What does Gregg say about the core principles of training for fast mass gain?
Okay, so he breaks down the principles of training into 4 main categories. Train intensely, train briefly, train infrequently, and train progressively.
Okay, let's unpack those. What does train intensely mean in this context?
Train intensely means pushing yourself to the point of momentary muscular failure on each set. This is the point where you literally cannot do another rep with good form.
Okay.
There's no point in stopping at an arbitrary number of reps if you still have more in the tank.
So you really have to push yourself beyond your comfort zone.
You do. Your muscles need to be challenged in order to grow.
Makes sense. Okay, so that's train intensely. What about train briefly?
Train briefly means keeping your workouts relatively short, ideally under an hour.
Yeah.
If you're spending 2 hours in the gym,
Yeah.
chances are you're not training intensely enough.
So it's quality over quantity.
Exactly. Gregg says you can train hard or you can train long, but you can't do both.
That's a great quote. Okay, so we've got train intensely and train briefly. What about train infrequently? That seems kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, a lot of people think that more is always better.
Right.
But Gregg argues that your body needs time to recover. If you train too often,
Yeah.
you're not giving your muscles enough time to repair and grow.
Okay.
You can actually hinder your progress by training too much.
So rest is just as important as the training itself.
Exactly. You're not growing in the gym.
Yeah.
You're growing when you're recovering.
Okay, so train intensely, briefly, and infrequently. And what about train progressively?
Train progressively means constantly challenging your body by gradually increasing the weight you lift
Right.
or the number of reps you do.
Right.
If you're doing the same weight for the same reps 6 months from now,
Yeah.
your body has no reason to grow.
It needs that stimulus to adapt.
It does. It needs to be pushed beyond its comfort zone.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are the 4 core principles of training, according to Gregg.
That's right.
Now let's talk about nutrition, because obviously that's a huge part of the equation as well.
Huge.
Gregg makes a good point about how people often overlook the challenges that skinny guys face when they're trying to gain weight.
Oh, yeah.
Like, everyone sympathizes with people who want to lose weight,
Right.
but it can be just as hard,
Yeah.
if not harder, to actually gain weight, especially if you've always been skinny.
Especially if you've always struggled to eat enough.
Yeah.
You know, you're constantly being told to eat less, be smaller, and then suddenly you have to flip that script and force yourself to eat more than you're comfortable with.
Yeah, it's a totally different mindset.
It is. And it can be really challenging, both physically and mentally.
Okay, so what does he say about the kind of like the core principles of nutrition for muscle growth?
Okay, so first of all, he emphasizes that you can't build muscle without enough calories.
Right, you need that fuel.
You do.
Yeah.
And by calories, I mean quality calories.
Yeah, not just junk food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dieting for muscle gain isn't about starving yourself.
Right.
It's about eating the right kinds of foods
Yes,
in
yeah.
the right amounts.
Okay, so strategic eating.
Exactly. And he acknowledges that nutrition can be a confusing topic.
Oh, it definitely is.
There are so many different diets out there.
Right.
It's hard to know what to believe.
It can be overwhelming.
But he says that there are certain fundamental principles
Okay.
that apply to pretty much any good muscle building program.
Okay, so what are those fundamental principles?
Let's start with the macronutrients. You've got carbs, protein, and fat.
Okay.
Carbs are your body's primary source of energy,
Mm-hmm.
especially during intense exercise like weightlifting. They fuel your workouts,
Yeah.
and they're also crucial for recovery.
Right.
They help to replenish glycogen stores in your muscles.
Which is basically stored energy.
Exactly. And they also help to shuttle nutrients into your muscle cells through the release of insulin.
Right.
He also talks about carb cycling, which is where you manipulate your carb intake
Okay.
to enhance muscle growth and fat loss.
Interesting.
And he also mentions the protein-sparing effect of carbs.
Okay. What's that?
So when you eat enough carbs,
Yeah.
your body doesn't have to break down muscle protein for energy.
Okay, so the carbs are kind of protecting the muscle.
Exactly.
Okay, so carbs are important, but what kind of carbs should we be eating?
He's very clear on this point.
Why?
Avoid processed foods like the plague.
Okay.
They're loaded with empty calories and sugar,
Yeah.
and they don't provide any nutritional value.
Right.
Stick to whole, unrefined carbs like whole grains, fruits, and vegetables.
Got it. So quality carbs.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on to protein. That's kind of the star of the show when it comes to muscle building, right?
It is. Protein is the building block of muscle tissue.
Yeah.
You can't build muscle without it.
And what's the recommended intake?
Gregg recommends at least 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass.
Okay.
And some people might even need more than that.
Wow.
He personally was eating 250 grams of protein a day.
That's a lot of protein.
It is, but if you're serious about building muscle,
Yeah.
you need to be serious about your protein intake.
Okay, so protein is crucial. What about fat? I feel like fat has a really bad reputation when it comes to nutrition.
It does.
Yeah.
But it's really undeserved.
Okay.
Gregg talks about how the low-fat craze in the 80s actually coincided with a rise in obesity.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
It is, and he points out that good fats like omega-3s and omega-6s are actually essential for health and muscle growth.
Okay.
The problem isn't fat itself.
Right.
It's the type of fat you're eating.
So what kind of fats should we be avoiding?
You want to avoid trans fats and saturated fats.
Okay.
These are found in things like margarine, shortening, processed foods, fast food.
Yeah.
And you want to focus on getting enough good fats.
Like the omega-3s and 6s?
Exactly. Those are found in foods like salmon, walnuts, flax seeds, olive oil.
Okay.
He also recommends supplementing with CLA,
Which stands for?
conjugated linoleic acid.
Okay.
It's a fatty acid that has some pretty impressive benefits.
Like what?
It's been shown to increase muscle mass, reduce body fat, and even improve immune function.
Wow. Okay.
And he points out that essential fatty acids are particularly important for muscle building
Okay.
because very low-fat diets can actually suppress testosterone production.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so don't be afraid of fat.
Right, just make sure it's the good kind. Okay, so we've talked about carbs, protein, and fat. What about water?
Water is essential.
Yeah.
Our bodies are mostly water.
Right.
Even mild dehydration can impair muscle growth.
Okay.
So make sure you're drinking plenty of water throughout the day.
At least 8 glasses a day, right?
Yeah, at least.
Okay, so to summarize, we need to be eating enough calories, but they need to be quality calories coming from whole, unprocessed foods.
Yes.
We need to be getting enough protein, ideally at least 1 gram per pound of lean body mass.
Right.
And we need to be making sure we're getting enough healthy fats, not just avoiding all fats completely.
Absolutely.
And of course, we need to be staying properly hydrated.
Very important.
Okay, so we've covered training and nutrition in pretty good detail. Now let's move on to supplementation.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people are curious about that.
Yeah, it's a huge industry.
It is, and it can be really overwhelming and confusing.
It can. There are so many products out there, and it's hard to know what works and what doesn't.
Exactly. And Gregg actually talks about how he wasted a lot of money on bogus supplements early on.
He did.
So what does he say about how to choose the right supplements?
Well, first of all, he emphasizes that supplements are not a magic bullet.
Right.
They're not going to make up for a bad diet or inconsistent training.
You can't out-supplement a bad lifestyle.
You can't. Supplements are just that, supplements. They're meant to enhance your results,
Okay.
not create them.
So your training and nutrition need to be dialed in first.
Exactly. And then you can add supplements to further boost your progress.
Makes sense.
He also stresses the importance of choosing quality supplements from reputable companies.
Right, because there are a lot of shady products out there.
There are. And he divides supplements into 2 categories:
Okay.
core supplements and additional supplements.
Okay, what are core supplements?
Core supplements are the ones that he considers to be essential for everyone,
Okay.
regardless of their goals.
Okay.
These include a good multivitamin and multimineral, essential fatty acids, and antioxidants.
So basically foundational support for overall health.
Exactly. And he also includes meal replacement powders and protein powders in this category.
Makes sense. Those are pretty essential for most people who are training hard.
They are. Especially if you're trying to get enough protein.
Yeah.
They're just so convenient.
Okay, so those are core supplements. What about additional supplements?
Additional supplements are the ones that can provide more targeted benefits depending on your specific goals.
Okay.
These include things like creatine, glutamine, and ZMA.
Right.
And again, he emphasizes that you should only consider these after you've got your core nutrition and training dialed in.
Don't get ahead of yourself.
Exactly.
Okay, so he divides supplements into 2 categories. And he specifically talks about creatine and CLA in more detail.
He does.
Let's start with creatine. That's probably the most popular supplement out there, right?
It is, and for good reason.
Okay.
Gregg calls it the most effective bodybuilding supplement available.
Wow. High praise.
It's been around for a long time. It was first discovered in the 1830s.
Really?
Yeah. But it didn't really gain popularity until the 90s.
Interesting.
And for those who don't know,
Yeah.
creatine is a naturally occurring compound that helps to supply energy to your muscles.
Okay.
Your body actually produces creatine on its own.
It does.
It does. But supplementing with creatine can significantly increase your creatine stores.
Okay, and what are the benefits of having more creatine?
Well, creatine has been shown to increase muscle mass, strength, and power.
Wow. Okay.
It also helps to improve recovery and reduce muscle damage.
So pretty much every athlete could benefit from it.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's a very safe supplement.
That's good to know.